Hello humans. Hello humans. This is a good translation. Let's see. Okay, so when last we left off, we were considering the idea that we have to harden ourselves against incoming intruding thoughts as a result of this big ugly that's going to be heaped on us as a result of the end of the financial system that had been engineered over our economy. And we find ourselves going through all of this bullshit when we're entering into a grand solar minimum. Grand solar minimums are interesting because they're going to lower the overall global temperature, so a cooling effect. They last as long as the sun decides that they shall last. It's an issue of solar output as a result of the sun moving through interstellar medium at a particular speed, hauling all the planets behind them, and the amount of dust that the sun encounters and the amount of electricity that is generated as a result of the movement of the sun through that interstellar medium. Anyway, so we're entering into a grand solar minimum, goes around it to hit the planets behind it, and that's us guys, as well as Mars and Venus and Jupiter and all these other guys, right? All these other planets. So in the course of things, there is a progression of climate, and climate, by the way, is change. This is weather, okay? So this is my weather today. The wind's blowing, it's sunny, etc., etc. Tomorrow it might be raining. The accumulation of the todays and tomorrows over time and the changes in the weather during that period of time is all lumped together and we call climate. So when they say climate change, you should look at them and say, well, duh, yeah, it should. Climate is change. It's supposed to change. Anyway, so our climate is going to cool around the planet, and we're going to go into an ice age, but conversely, or unexpectedly, we will receive more cosmic radiation, which has an accumulated effect on the planet relative to the biopressure. And we will receive larger amounts of solar radiation in specific frequencies. Now, this is where it becomes somewhat counterintuitive, right? You have to understand that life is all based on green plants, and green plants use a very narrow frequency of visible light, and very narrow frequency of infrared, and a very narrow frequency of ultraviolet light. So you could increase the sun's output in wide spectra of energy. So it could be putting out infrared like mad, and it could be boiling the whole planet, and it wouldn't increase biopressure at all because it's not going to do anything for the green plants, including the green plants in the ocean behind me, right? The chloroplasts that are within the plankton and the other green plants that do photosynthesis in the water. So you can increase the sun's output without increasing the biopressure. To the point where the Earth could be damaged and you still wouldn't have any increase in the biopressure. That's not what we're going to go through, though. We're going to go through a period of time where we have a decrease in the sun's output in general in a lot of the visible light, and it will make the planet itself, the underlying substrate of the biosphere, cooler. But at the same time, there's going to be an increased biopressure because the frequencies of light that are going to increase, even though there's going to be only a very small amount of increase, it's going to be in a very specific narrow band, already is, in narrow bands in the ultraviolet, infrared, and visible light spectra that affect green plants. So you're going to notice that the green plants really start growing wherever you are able to overcome the temperature problems. And it is this confluence of events of the rock underneath, the substrate underneath, going through its cooling period relative to the sun, with the green plants getting into their an increased biopressure period, which puts increased biopressure on animals and mineral deposits and all different kinds of stuff. That is part of the alteration of the species over time that has been labeled evolution. This is the pressure that is put on those species to evolve, to change and adapt as we get things moving. So, for instance, we now have humans that are born under this sun, and this sun is a white sun. It's not my sun. I was born under a yellow sun, so I don't know how I would do over time under these solar radiations. But it is much more intense than the sun I was born into. So because we have increased biopressure, I know that in spite of the failure of the financial system and the attendant political chaos, that we're actually going to be entering into a recovery period, because this is a recovery period for the biosphere, in the sense that it's an alteration to accommodate itself to the new output and increase output here on the planet. We find that the minimums, if we go through and we look at all of the weather patterns, we find that those minimums we're able to identify, usually the big nasty ones, have an impact that is further reaching than the duration of the minimum in the biopressure that subsequently follows. So a minimum is apparently a necessary dive down in order that there might, in terms of temperature at least, in order that there might be an alteration within frequencies of light and the ability to transform the cosmic radiation into different forms of energy and activity here on, within the biosphere. Now, so I know we're going to go into a recovery period. We for instance, just okay, so we have many issues. We're going to have a baked into the cake here in the United States, here in North America, and across the liberal Western republics. We're going to have an issue relative to supply chains that's been engineered. It'll take a couple of years to work this out. A lot of these issues are simply via edict, okay? We don't have an underlying food problem, right? We have a distribution problem, a destroyed distribution system problem, a bunch of fucktards at the top that are destroying that distribution in order to cause the problem for their own evil ends. We don't have a food production problem on this planet. All of humanity, all 8 billion of us, could live in Texas, and we would all be able to have twice as much room as a luxurious minimum security prisoner in a federal prison. So if you took the square feet that's allocated to a high-end prisoner here in the United States prison system, we could all have that much square feet, and we'd all fit in the top part of Texas. And the rest of the planet would be devoid of humans. So there's nothing like overpopulation. There is overpopulation for the ability of the Khazarian Mafia to control that population and to direct things to benefit the Khazarian Mafia. That's where we're at. That's the circumstances that we're facing now, is that they are objecting to our not doing what they want. Basically, they're a bunch of really dumb fucktards who happen to be violent, and so we are going into a recovery. The recovery period will take, it'll take us a couple of years to, about maybe another 18 months, to actually admit that we've crashed. Everybody to have the media all around the planet acknowledge the infiltration of the media itself and government by the Khazarian Mafia and all of this. We've got to get to that point where we actually face this and deal with it as adults, and from that point on, we're into recovery. It's kind of like alcoholism, right? As long as you keep drinking, you're not going to get into recovery for that addiction. And that's kind of the way we are with our bad media and stuff. Until we face that and deal with it, it doesn't change. So once that is dealt with, and I think that'll happen as a result of the financial crash that we're going to go through this year as part of the big ugly. It's necessary on all parties' parts that we endure this, and I think that as a result of that, we'll get to the point where we all acknowledge that we've been in the big ugly, and from that point on we can get out. Getting out is going to be relatively simple for some parts of it, simply because it is because that was simply a matter of an edict. Somebody wrote their name on a sheet of paper. Later on in, they typed, "Hey, shut down that pipeline." They got him to write on another blank sheet of paper, and they said, "Hey, shut down this ability to drill oil." And thus the United States is no longer energy independent. That was done by edict, not by any natural occurrence. So all of those kind of things we can fix fairly rapidly by signing in somebody else's name and undoing all of that shit, right? And then get things back. Now, we will still have the necessary inbuilt time lag of rebuilding, so we will have to rebuild shit. But we're going to have to rebuild anyway, because China will no longer accept our dollars. Therefore, we won't be able to buy shit from China. Therefore, we will have to make it here. So that means that if you were far thinking enough, you could analyze local real estate markets and population pressure and need and so on. But bear in mind, lots of people are going to croak as a result of having taken their 4th or 45th or however many boosters are recommended at the moment. And so that'll cause further deflationary pressure. Is when you put somebody in the ground, they no longer need consumer services. But in any event, though, if you were looking at all of this appropriately, you could analyze your local real estate market and make decisions relative to the growing need to manufacture stuff here in the United States and buy strategic property. So that's one way to grow with this particular circumstances that we find ourselves in. Another way would be to manufacture stuff that people need here. Parts for existing machines or parts for new machines, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, though, we will enter into this recovery. I think, based on historical analogs to our current situation, that it will take probably somewhere close to 7 years. Maybe 8, because they've really been able to dumb down the population here in the United States. If we were to get our shit together and deal with this as adults, and we had the population being accommodative to the need to reorganize around reconstruction and so on, in like a 1930s civilian construction corps kind of an effort, we could probably accomplish a great deal much more rapidly and get this done in maybe 6 years. We will, at the end of this period of time, or during this period of time, we will develop sound money. As a result of sound money, we will have sound politics and better decisions, and we will guide the ship of state a little bit better through these very choppy waters. This all is predicated on the recognizing of the fact that we're in the big ugly. You can't ignore it and get out of it. So that's where we're at now. The big ugly is started some time back, and we're mired in it, and it's going to get very much more ugly as we go forward the rest of 2022 and some distance into 2023. The faster we as a society recognize and deal with the big ugly in terms of factual discussions and all of this kind of stuff, the faster we will reach that point where we can say, aha, recovery began here. I'm estimating that recovery will begin sometime on the other side of March next year. But that's just an estimate based on gut feeling and current emotional tension values more than anything else. So I don't really have any prognostication as to when we will actually get to that point where the existing media finally caves in and says, yeah, and people go to jail and all of that sort of thing, right? But we need to get to that point. And at the point, and coincidentally, as I was saying, the BioPressure is here to provide us further impetus within that recovery. I think that's about it. I have some housekeeping kind of stuff at the moment. There's a lot more to get into in terms of the big ugly, in terms of the recovery and how to go about it, and the ability to take advantage of the dynamics of the circumstances that will emerge as we go forward. I'll have some more videos discussing that and details in the future. Part of this whole thing is that I'm redoing my ability to do videos, setting up a portable, decent, or a transportable, reasonably easily transportable, decent video recording setup so I can take advantage of some things that are some of the projects and so on. Anyway, so some housekeeping. I'm only on Telegram as Sci-Fi World, all right? I'm only on True Social as @Clif with one F, High, all as one word. And I only post videos on BitChute. If you're seeing, and I only have the Clif High Substack. So if you're seeing it anywhere else, it's basically lifted material. And I can't be responsible for what other people have done with the material, how they chop it up, and that sort of thing. And so that's that. I guess that's it. Also, as we go forward here into the further into the Big Ugly, we're going to get to the point where it's going to really start affecting things even more economically. If you have the wherewithal and if you have the need for a decent night's sleep, you may want to check into my Pure Sleep product because it does not use melatonin. And as a result of that, you don't wake up with that hormonal hangover feeling the next day. And that really gives you, I think, in my opinion, and that of other people, the users of it, gives you an edge in dealing with all of the decisions you're going to have to make during these days of the Big Ugly and the recovery. Recovery won't be easy, but it will get easier over time. Big Ugly is just going to get worse over time as we go through these next few months. More and more stuff's going to come on out. We're going to learn a whole lot of stuff we would rather not. We're going to have to experience a lot of stuff that's going to be reactions of the deep state. They may take down the power grid, blame it on the sun. They may blame it on space aliens. They may release the information about space aliens. We may indeed have the riots based on or centered around food in the East Coast as well as in Italy that will break into federal facilities here in the East Coast and in the Vatican facilities in Italy that will further release more space alien info from the classified coffers in both areas. And those are only a couple of them. So we're entering into a very interesting period of time that will be very chaotic. I personally use the Pure Sleep just as a side note, and it works. I get up every day and I do stuff. And I'm very much motivated in a very positive way to get through all of this and observe it and catalog it as we go forward, but also to pursue my own projects that are aimed at getting us beyond this, like my 9-amp photovoltaic replacement system that's basically low power, low pressure steam run on biomass being converted into methane. So I wrote about that on the Substack. I think that's about it. So I'll consider this an ending for now. As I say, I've got to set these things up. I'm teaching myself editing, as well as some of the hardware crap and this sort of thing that's necessary for decent video recording these days. And consequently, going to make a lot of mistakes as I go forward. Trying to create videos around the projects that are going to be emerging for myself and others within the Big Ugly and into the recovery.